Hey, this is Ramon, channel is Alpha 4. I made a video responding to Dallas Wade where I made a, let's call it an extraordinary claim, which was that his questions were the wrong questions. And I know that a lot of people believe that there are no wrong questions, but I think there are. Let me explain that a little bit better. So, the kind of questions that he was asking, and a lot of atheists like to ask, in particular, these questions have a, you want to call it an implicit bias, you want to use modern terminology, but I would actually say that they betray an agenda and it actually shuts down the conversation. So I'd like to give a video here, it might be one part or two parts, where I'm going to give you 5 bad questions, and I would like all the religious people watching this to answer. Now I'm going to give 5 good questions, and I would like all the religious people watching to answer those as well. Like I said, it's probably going to be in 2 parts, and I'll give some examples as well after I ask each question. So let's do the bad questions first. And this can be badly formulated, or like I said, betray an agenda and show that you're not actually asking an honest question. Even if you are, even if it's a real question, it comes across as having an agenda behind it, or an implicit bias, or maybe even an explicit bias behind it. Question number 1. Can you not see that there are obvious contradictions in your sacred text? How can you handle that and still believe it is true? Now, a more well-formulated question might be, how can you reconcile the contradictions in your sacred text? But it's still the same question. And it's still a problem, especially if you're trying to have dialogue. So for instance, in Hinduism, how can it be wrong to murder if the gods tell the heroes of the epics to murder? In Buddhism, how can you say that you need to get rid of everything if the Buddha had to first enjoy everything to ascend? In Christianity, in one book, creation happened in one set, and then in another book, creation happens in a different set. How can you say that divorce is wrong when in the Old Testament it says it's okay, but in the New Testament it says it's not okay? Isn't that an inherent contradiction? In Islam, how can you say that you love Christians if just a few surah later it says that you shouldn't trust Christians and that they are deceivers? Which one is it? Are they to be trusted, or are they not to be trusted? It's that same question. Okay? Bad question number 2. What about this fantastical claim or event in your sacred text? And you really believe that is true? So let's go with, do you really believe that the gods came down and spoke to your ancestors, the Greeks? Do you really believe that Athena spoke to Agamemnon? That Apollo spoke to Achilles? That Achilles is the son of a god, a water nymph? Do you really believe that is true? Isn't that crazy? You think a dolphin helped save a drowning brother and took him to shore? You have these 2 brothers who are supposed to be the family of Helen? Let's bring it to a little bit more modern. You really believe that Krishna came down and talked to your prince? You really believe that there was a flood in the Old Testament? That there was a flood that covered the entire world? Not just a local area, but the entire world? This is not helpful. You really believe that an angel came down and spoke to your prophet and gave him prophecies when he was illiterate? These are not helpful questions. If someone's already in the religion, so you're just being counterproductive, you're just being argumentative at that point. Okay, bad question number 3. This horrible event is described or alluded to in your sacred text, and the text seems to justify it, or at least give reason for it. And you believe in a deity that would allow or even demand such a thing to occur? And again, in Hinduism, Krishna tells the prince to kill the other soldiers But the older soldiers are his family members. His cousins and his friends that he grew up with are on the other side. And you expect your prince to go and slaughter them to win a victory for the god because it's destiny and fate? You believe in that? You believe Agamemnon had to sacrifice his own daughter Iphigenia so that way he could get wins? You believe that Isaac was told to sacrifice his son Jacob? You believe that the Canaanites had to be slaughtered, and you're okay with your deity telling your people, your ancestors, to do such a thing? In Islam, you're okay with Muhammad having been a warlord? Do you see how this is confrontational, counterproductive, and not helpful to any dialogue? Because these things happen in real life. The biblical text is putting it in context and trying to give an understanding to the reader of why these real things have occurred. It's saying, here's how real life works. Floods happen, murders happen, wars happen. Why does the universe, why does that which created the universe, why does that which sets the laws for the universe have these rules where these things can occur? No, we know it's morally offensive that people have to suffer or animals have to suffer. But why is that allowed? And you can't switch the question by saying, well, what kind of God would allow that? Because whatever God does exist does allow it because it does currently exist. We have to deal with reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. That's one of the problems with utopianism. Horrible question number 4. What about this other text you've never read that's sacred to a group of people you fundamentally disagree with? So, you're a Christian and a Protestant, and you're Christian and you're a Catholic. Well, what about what Augustine said? What about what St. Thomas said? Thomas Aquinas said? The Protestant's not going to accept that as a reasoning. Okay, sola scriptura, tradition. They're not going to meet. Let's go broader. In the Book of the Dead, they talk about resurrection, and in Christianity, they talk about resurrection. How does that relate? They don't. Even if they somehow inspired each other, they don't. They're completely different theologies. They're not talking to each other, and they're not talking for each other. The point is that the questions that are being addressed in Islam or Christianity or Buddhism or Hinduism are not cross-pollinated. Yes, they're answering the same situation, but their theology and understanding of that situation is completely different, and they're not trying to speak to each other. That's one of the complaints or problems with Islam. The theologies don't mix. For instance, in Christianity, Jesus does certain things in the Bible. In Islam, Jesus does completely different things, and specifically doesn't do one major thing that has to happen for the Bible to be true. So you can't use them to understand each other. They're not speaking the same. They're not speaking to the same audience, and the human authors behind it don't have the same agenda, regardless of whatever larger theology you might have behind the text. Okay, bad question number 5. What if you're wrong? Have you even considered that? Why can't you doubt like I do? Are you so stupid or cruel that you can't see pain and suffering around us? Now, there are several levels to this question, and it always comes down to the problem of evil, the problem of suffering. Here's the thing. Almost every religion that I've ever read, and I've read through a lot of sacred texts, deals with the problem of evil and suffering. In fact, a lot of the book is just surrounding that. It's just explaining the human condition and trying to put it in context for you to understand. Whether that's Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, all of those religions, Taoism, Shintoism, all deal with these issues. And they all have similar answers. Duty, fate, predestination, justification, purity. They're all going to have some kind of answer. Duty. So to say that these questions are not dealt with in the Bible or the Quran or the Bhagavad Gita or the Vedas, they're dealt with. And implying that the person is stupid or somehow deficient or somehow ignorant and has never thought of it is really insulting. Everyone's lived life. It's one of the little disagreements me and Dallas had, where I was telling him, like, he's assuming an ignorance that it's impossible for him to possess if he lives in a Western culture. If he was totally isolated, never met any other humans, and lived in a completely atheistic country, then I could understand him not knowing the answer to some of his basic questions. On the other hand, if you're in a Western society, even if you're not religious, even if you just read comic books and watch movies, these themes show up in our entertainment. So even if you don't have a religious understanding, you should have a broader general understanding. This happens with a lot of the more popular atheists, Dawkins and the like, is when they do one of these 5 terrible questions and they then assume the literality of a parable, and they lose credibility. Anyway, those are 5 bad questions for religious people. Peace, like, and subscribe. Hope you like this video. Please answer. And let's get to now 5 good questions.